Is there more than one reality happening right now? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, welcoming you back for a new season with my special guest, Cynthia Sue Larson. We're going to talk about the Mandela Effect right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on KCAA Radio in Southern California, Guys Radio, my worldwide podcast, and we're on UK Health Radio all weekend long. Guys TV, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, the interview portion of our show, and my special guest is I think, one of the world's most foremost experts on reality shifting and the Mandela Effect. Cynthia Sue Larson is back on the show. We're going to talk about her new book, The Mandela Effect and Its Society, which is a provocative title. Let me tell you a little bit about Cynthia Sue. She's been on the show before for over 25 years. Cynthia has been a former information systems manager with a physics degree from Berkeley and has sought to discover answers to so many questions about the Mandela Effect, reality shifting, timelines, from indigenous wisdom to quantum science to firsthand reports. Cynthia describes how the Mandela Effect is much more than a false collective memory and what it all means and why it's important and how it seems like it's going across the planet like wildfire. So welcome back to Guys Radio, Cynthia Sue Larson. Let's get into it.
Thank you, Robert. I love that introduction. It's exciting, and it gets me enthused to think about all this research, all these years I've been doing this, and I haven't lost my enthusiasm for it one bit. So
no, it's been dialed up, and I think you're doing tremendous work. And you know what? Everybody, I think, has had some type of Mandela Effect experience. And as I was reading the new book, it reminded me of some of the ones that we had discussed before, but some other ones that I had experienced but didn't realize. And that was the one with James Bond in Moonraker, where the big guy with the iron teeth, if you will, at the end when they did the ski lift thing, and he comes in contact with this gal, Dolores, I think her name is, and it was so funny when I saw the movie that they smile at each other, and because his name's Jaws, and you think he's going to like bite into her, but she smiles and she has braces on, a full metal mouth, and now if you watch Moonraker, she doesn't have that.
Right. I think her name might be Dolly. I'm not sure.
Dolly, either, okay, Dolly.
Yeah, that was the epic moment in the film. It was kind of a little offbeat because it was different than your typical 007 James Bond fare. It's not like you'd expect like a goofy moment like that. I loved that moment, and now it's strange.
It's so strange, and there's so many other moments that I personally have experienced, and I want to get into all of that. But let's start out for some of the folks who may not be familiar with what the Mandela Effect is. Of course, it goes back to Nelson Mandela, but I want to hear it from you, Cynthia Sue, as to what is the Mandela Effect in your esteemed opinion?
Okay, well, simply put, it's just a collective mismatched memory. So it means that there are groups of people clearly remember something the same way or very similarly with exquisite detail, like Dolly's braces, for example. Not something different, not like she had special glasses or an eye patch or a strange piece of hair equipment, nothing like that. We're very specific about what we remember. So it's a very shared, mismatched in the sense that it no longer fits any of the recorded history. So we'll go look up any of the 007 Moonraker movies and not be able to find any evidence of it there. The only evidence we'll find is from people going to social media or talking to each other and saying, wait a minute, I remember something. What do you remember? And it's very strange. So this is it's exquisitely important at this time because we do face a lot of global problems. And to me, there are some clues in the way that this is a shared experience. The subtitle of the book is Awakening from Me, which stands for Mandela Effect, to we. So it's a double entendre. It means both moving from one experience of just me thinking I must have misremembered something to the community awareness. Like, well, then if I misremembered it, why do all these other people also remember it exactly the same way I do? And sometimes we've got anchor memories, reasons that we clearly know for sure something used to be a certain way.
Now, the name of the book is The Mandela Effect and Its Society, Awakening from Me to We. But what does that mean, and its society?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think there would be a Mandela effect without the people and the groups of people involved. It just wouldn't exist because we need groups of people, first of all, to notice, hey, we remember things similarly and differently than what's been recorded. So automatically, you've got a group of people that start to form a society. The society gets stronger when people talk to each other, and then they start noticing, maybe you've noticed it too. If you talk to people who have not yet experienced the phenomenon, they'll take a couple steps back or look at you kind of funny, or they'll just assume you're just, getting all excited about nothing. That's what Cynthia does or whatever. So they'll just assume that. But the society enters in when you find, like, I don't want to be gaslighted or gaslit by these people who put it down when I know for sure what I remember, and I'm going to have confidence in my memories. The society also plays a role because myself and others have looked into what kind of commonalities do the experiencers have? What do they share? And I assumed it would not be that we're crazy, and indeed, it does not show that we're crazy.
Let's
So,
talk about
yeah,
that a little bit because not everybody experiences this. I've experienced it every single instance in the book. You mentioned Larry Hagman. We spoke about that last time because I brought that up to
yes,
you, and then I read it
yes,
again in your book where I remember I saw him at the Windows of the World in the World Trade Center. He was having drinks one time. I was up there for a business thing. I'm like, oh, Larry Hagman from Dallas. And then
yes.
I read, sadly, about a year later or so, this was in the late 90s, that he had passed. And then I read that a couple of years later that he was having some surgery, liver transplant or something. And then I read that he
Right.
passed another year or so after that, but he had another series coming out or something to that effect. And I'm like, I thought for sure that he died. So
I
how does
covered
that?
that.
How do you
Yeah.
explain that?
And this would be the Hagman effect if people like you and I had been more numerous. I'm sure of it. If we'd caught Art Bell's attention and so forth, but that didn't happen. I also shared my experience with noticing Larry Hagman died and was alive again in my book Reality Shifts that I wrote in the 1990s. So it's well before the term Mandela effect came out. So how do I explain it? This is one of the biggest ones, and I mentioned Mark Twain, of course, his famous quote about the rumors of my
Yes.
death have been greatly exaggerated, something to that effect. Actually, I think that could qualify as a Mandela effect. So I included in this book the Mandela effect in its society. And what seems to be going on is it looks like, well, there are a number of possible theories, but what if there are numerous timelines, which it does seem like that is the case? What if we're living in a kind of simulation, if you will? Some people call it a dream. That's the original term, would be we're living in a dream. And I think there's an element of truth to the simulation dream theory and also the many worlds of the, quantum theory being one and the same as the multiverse. In other words, we literally can walk from one reality into another. So this is not supposed to happen. Physicists will tell you many worlds is only for the quantum realm. That's just a theory. It is there to explain quantum strange qualities, but the multiverse, that's another theory, but they seldom put the two together. I do know some physicists that are starting to say, what if those two do go together? What if we can jump from one reality to another? They hardly ever say that in public right now, but I've had them interested in the work that I'm doing and interested when I tell them that you didn't exist before. And I know for sure because I've done the research, and then suddenly, boom, there you were. Hundreds of papers suddenly sprang into reality as if you were always there, which was not the case for me before I wrote Quantum Jumps. I was apologizing. I'm so sorry you're not in the book. You should be. But it was a fun conversation to have because that gentleman, Yasunori Nomura, he just he nodded like, yeah, he got it. He said, "Do you have a copy of that book?" Like, sure, it's in the trunk of my car. Let me get it for you. Let me give you one. That was Quantum Jumps. But yeah, so this we're in a strange world right now because we can look at this very amazing natural world that we live in and recognize the more you look, the weirder it looks, the stranger it gets. It doesn't get more orderly and more materialistic, not at all. It becomes more and more clear to myself and a number of others that consciousness is at the root, the foundation of everything.
Now, when you say Cynthia and Cynthia Sue Larson is my special guest on Guys Radio, the world's probably foremost expert on the Mandela effect, that there are we might be in a simulation and that there's timelines. Well, and it's a dream. Well, if it's a dream and we are still experiencing it, so it's real. So it's like saying a dream is real or it's not real. It's real. It's not like we're in a game, but it seems like that maybe as consciousness is raising on the planet, the distance between the different timelines and the dimensions has it's like bouncing off each other, or sometimes overlapping. Is this what's happening? Why we seem to be noticing it now and not like 200 years ago?
Yeah, certain people are experiencing it more than others. We're noticing it more now than we have collectively noticed it before. You're right about that. So both of these factors are important, I believe. And when we look at what's happening right now and why is it happening, it does seem like I would say we need it, so it's happening. I think that's the way nature works. Nature gives us what we need. And I share an example, firsthand report written by Carl Jung in the book. I do mention a few experiences of what I really consider to be the Mandela effect. I think these are important. Carl Jung, as you know, he was a leading theorist, a psychologist, but also the progenitor of the idea of the collective unconscious and these ideas that things can be kind of dreamlike. He experienced it himself with enough phenomena that he coined the term synchronicity. And at the urging of his friend physicist Wolfgang Pauli. But what was interesting that I include in the book Mandela Effect and its Society is that Carl Jung, he went to Ravenna, Italy with a friend of his, and Tony Wolff was his friend, and she was with him on the trip. They were at a basilica where there were some beautiful, gigantic mosaic tiles in an octagonal room with blue light. The mosaics were like 6 by 8 feet, huge, and each of the four mosaics depicted these these beautiful spiritual religious motifs, excuse me. And so basically they were showing things like baptisms and the crossing, Moses leading his people to safety, that kind of thing. And he talked quite a bit about them and the meaning of them when he was there with Tony. Long story short, they come back home and Carl had some other friends. He started regretting that he hadn't picked up any postcards when he was there in 1930. Yeah, like those were amazing. Why didn't I think to do that? So he asked friends, could you pick up a postcard or, something like that? And be sure to check out the Basilica in Ravenna. Well, came back the news that there is no basilica like that with those mosaics. They don't exist. And so to me, this is an extremely fascinating case because now we've got a world premier thinker. This is somebody, a psychologist, who's quite adept at recognizing when there's something that's a little bit unreal. But to him and to Tony, Tony vouched for Carl Jung and said, yes, for sure. We were talking about this for some 20 or 30 minutes. It was a long discussion. Carl was just riffing off of what each of the symbolic mosaics in might mean. And so it was quite clear that that had definitely happened. But now they went back to Italy too, and they could find no trace of this extraordinary room with the four gigantic mosaics. It didn't exist. So the reason I'm going into detail on that is because here we've got a world-class thinker, someone who knows what he's seeing. I would take his case very seriously, as I'm doing right now, because to me, this counts as a Mandela effect, probably one of the first that was really
Mhm.
documented. And because of that, I think we can start to see into the question you're asking. Are we looking at these timelines, these many worlds? I would say, with what we know about physics now, yes. I think at that time, some of these concepts were just starting to spring forth. Quantum physics was only in 1930, it had only been around for 30 years. So I think Carl Jung would have probably gone definitely into that a lot more than he did. But at least he was able to see that it was simultaneously real. Yes, real. It's like we're in a dream, a simulation, and it's real. So Carl, I think he was a fabulous firsthand experiencer, really one of the best we could hope for.
So are there other versions of ourselves, for instance, and if there's different timelines, kind of a dual question here. One is, can like Mick Jagger, he's in the Rolling Stones now, is there another timeline where maybe because he went to the London School of Economics, that he's a business person and they're coexisting and we're experienced collectively uh, him as a rock star right now. But there's other and also our own roles are
Yes.
different, and how many of those are there, and what exactly is a timeline, and how do they how do they intersect and overlap, and can we impact them? So I'm throwing a lot at you because I want to get the whole framework here for our
Right.
audience.
Well, to answer these questions, I'll have to put on the hat of my Mandela Effect experiencer, because
Yes.
in physics, we don't really have answers to that. We've got theories,
Yeah.
we have interpretations, but we don't have answers. But as an experiencer, it does seem to me that yes, those it is like that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which came out a few
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And that's, I mean, that movie was fiction and it was showing things which are not exactly the way that I experience it when I move between timelines, but I do notice that if I need to draw on some experience that I don't have in my experience, my personal history, I can still access it, not so much like an Akashic records as it is more like the awareness that in some version of reality I did choose to become a musician. So I have therefore jumped on stage and played drums when I've never learned how to play the drums, nor had the courage to jump on a stage and play a real live drum kit where when the drummer walked off the stage for some unknown reason, and I just started feeling like my body wanted to play the drums, and it became just I couldn't resist that, even though it made no sense to my logical mind. Like you're getting in it way over your head, and thought, what's the worst that could happen? Like severe embarrassment. But so, but I was able to do that. But it was the awareness that I have that I can jump into that alternate reality, and that comes in handy when I've been locked out of this place I was staying, which happened when I was staying with Paula Harris in Crestone, Colorado, back in May. We were checking out, and she was horrified to find that we were locked out of the front door. The key code had changed, or it had locked us out somehow. And I just needed my one suitcase out of there so we could make the 5 hour trip back to civilization. We were in the middle of nowhere. And she put her hand on my shoulder and said, Cynthia, it'll take 5 hours for a locksmith to get here. It's 3 in the afternoon. It'll be 8. Then we'll be arriving where we need to be like 2 in the morning, where our friends aren't going to want to stay up that late. And I said, don't worry, this, because I could feel a rush of energy. So how this works, it's an energy thing. So to jump timelines, I know I need energy. I felt reassured instantly. Well, instantly I remembered I've done this lots of times. Like, oh, getting into a locked place that I need to get into right now, no problem. I just felt it made me happy. Like, oh, it's that. That's a good one that I've done. And so I just smiled at her, like, no problem. I'm just going to go around back. And she said, but I locked the back door. I said, yes, I know. Don't worry about that. And I said, this is the same thing we've been talking about consciousness at this whole weekend workshop seminar. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just jump timelines. I can feel the rush of energy. I'm in a good mood. I'm feeling confident. And so it's just a matter now of connecting to what you might call source, creator, the oneness, the necessary being, I think is what Leibniz called it. So anyway, I'm connecting with that, recognizing love and necessity. Like, and then when I get closer to the sliding glass door and I can see it, I see it's locked. It's in the locked position, but I'm not concerned at all because I know from quantum physics you can be in a superposition of states. You can look locked and actually be open. So I'm counting on it. I'm still counting on it being open. No worries. And so I get to it and I just slide it open, knowing that that can happen. But that's what's important here. So I'm sort of going through all the steps in a real life experience. And then Paula was slowly following me. I went to go open the front door. She wasn't there. She thought I was going to fail and she was going to console me or whatever. I was opening the front door to let her in. And she
Wow.
said, "What?" She said, "I locked this door." And I said, "Yeah, I know." But I felt the energy. I was able to know that there can be this multiple, all these different choices that in some reality somewhere that door is not locked in the back, even though it looks locked. No problem.
That's a great story. My special guest on Guys Radio is Cynthia Sue Larson, world's foremost expert on the Mandela Effect. We're talking about timelines and kind of changing realities. Yesterday, in fact, I was in the Costco parking lot, and my Subaru has this feature where you can run your foot behind underneath the car and it'll open the back trunk. So it opened. It opens up, and then I went over and opened the side door of the car, and the horns started going and the power was on in the vehicle. And I'm like, it went on for like 5 minutes or so. And then eventually it reset. And it shouldn't do that. But for whatever, I guess you're supposed to unlock the car and then do that. But the whole idea is if you have some packages, you just you have your key fob, you put your key. The point is, I started to get more and more nervous. and the time ran out and the system reset itself. What I guess I should have done, I guess for people who run into this type of situation, it's very easy to go into the nervous mode. And
Yes.
based on the last month I've had, I went into the nervous mode and I'm like, what's going to happen? And then it stopped. But I don't know if that was because I had a quietude or spirit helped me or whatever. But I guess the point is when these things happen, we need to realize that it doesn't have to be the way it seems. And we have the power to have an impact on the situation. And we can shift the timeline if we believe we can and have a positive vibe about it. Is that true?
Yes, the positive vibe does matter, and that can be challenging when we're in a
Right.
situation with the alarm going blaring
Right.
and blaring and
Yeah.
drawing attention in the parking lot, which is not very fun.
Exactly.
So at that point, it helps to have already had a wealth of experience of these things already. You want to start with the small reality shifting, the small quantum jumps, timeline jumps, and then work your way up to the ones where you can handle this even with an audience watching and the alarm flashing and beeping. Um, yeah, that it is ideally a matter of just staying calm and recognizing that no matter what things look like, you can make a choice to how you respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it does help to laugh, to be relaxed. Laughter is great because it kind of resets the autonomic and parasympathetic nervous systems. So then instantly, it's hard to hold on to that clutching, clenching tightness. And if it's hard to laugh and be doing that at the same time.
Right.
So you want to lose that tension, that clutching feeling, because that's where we're essentially locking in a physical reality by that tenseness and that tightness and the tautness. It's like quantum Zeno effect locking it in, which is the quantum watch pot never boils because you're constantly observing it in that clenched tight position. The laughter, the relaxing, that higher level of joy and just like, oh, I've done this one before, that would be optimal. So that when you get to the crisis crunch, then it's like familiar and fun. Like, oh, this is no problem. Got
Now,
this one.
for some folks who
Mm,
aren't aware of Cynthia, so when you get into this in the
mm.
book, well, I think I like to get your opinion on it, but it seems like you've been kind of selected energetically to kind of bring a lot of this stuff to the forefront for people. And you've
Right.
had some experiences, including, and you're not the only one, but because I think Philip K. Dick had the same thing where you met your
Yes.
future self.
Yes. That's
Uh,
right.
and I guess your future self is about your age now, and you
Mm.
met yourself, this version of you back when you were like a teen.
Right. Some version of me. I don't know which version of me. And this
Okay.
is where it's
Yeah.
very interesting because
Mhm.
I'm open to having that run through, being prompted at some random moment, like, okay, it's happening. Now you're going to walk. What happened is, I was 16 years old. I'd just gone to bed. I was in a bedroom by myself, which had a whole entire wall of floor to ceiling mirrors. It was like mirrored closet sliding doors. So I'd shut the bedroom door like I usually did, gone to bed, the lights off like usual. Hadn't yet totally fallen asleep when I felt like there was a presence in my room. I opened my eyes and I saw a glowing vision. It looked like me, like now, float walking, not walking normally, but kind of float walking. I
Mhm.
don't, it's hard to describe, like not quite touching the floor, but
Mhm.
like a, I don't know. Well, you understand. Anyway, float walking and calming me, apparently telepathically. I was talking, my 16-year-old self was talking out loud, like, hello, what are you doing here? Or something like that. So it was a one-sided conversation. I'd say these things and she would calmly, soothingly think things back to me. Like, I'm here and everything's fine. I'll just be here for a moment. I'm retrieving something. She opened the lower drawer of my roll top desk, an oak desk, large roll top desk, removed something. I was just watching her, like, what the heck is going on here? And then she just float walked back into the mirrored glass doors and vanished. And because I've been talking out loud, I think that's why. The next thing that happens is my bedroom door opens. It's my dad. He's like, "Are you all right?" I don't even know what to say. Yes. And I'm thinking like, "Oh, this is really weird." And I'm like, "What the heck happened?" I don't know what to say to him. I'm just, astonished. He shuts the door again, and it's hard to fall asleep. But in the morning, we had a lot of time to think about this. And then I jump up and I search the drawer and I think, what's going on here? I couldn't find anything missing in the drawer, but I put some. letters that were from my boyfriend, who I was my first husband. Those letters were under the drawer. They were gone. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I couldn't, this is the funny part. I couldn't believe that the myself from the future could have stolen them. So I accused of course, my little sister because that's logical, right? So I storm into her room. She's not even awake yet. You know, like, how dare you take those letters from my desk? She's like, what letters? I don't know what you're talking about. And after a few minutes of arguing with her, I realized she's really angry and upset that I'm waking her up, and I don't think she did it. And then I'm thinking, that's crazy, because then the only answer is my future self stole those letters from me.
And that is so weird. Why do you, and looking back, why, and when you were, and then at that point also, what was your take on that? Like, why? And then now looking back, do you have a different take on it?
Yeah, at the time I had no clue. It just seemed like it was my own personal X-Files before there was an X-Files TV show, because the year was 19, what was it, 1978. So there was no X-Files on TV. There's nothing like that. There was the Twilight Zone, I guess, but this was weirder than anything I'd ever seen or heard of. I didn't know Philip K. Dick had met his future self at that point. I didn't know, wasn't reading Philip K. Dick. So no clues, nothing to go on. That was my take on it then. Like, it was just this epic mystery. Like, that's the weirdest thing, one of the weirdest things that's ever happened. I had several other weird things. I'd seen UFOs and stuff like that, but this was way up there.
Let's
Now,
go ahead.
yeah. Okay, this took on a great deal more meaning when I had the courage to get divorced from my first husband and realize, even though I felt like this love was meant to be and he was true love, it felt like it gave me permission in a way that was hard for me to even explain. But for my own self to have stolen those letters was a way of saying, don't get fixated on this. Be willing to learn and grow and change. And I think it made a big difference to me. It was the most reassuring thing I could have done. And it was a message to myself.
Yes,
So,
absolutely
yeah,
amazing. There's some other just play a little, have a little fun with this. There's some other instances that have like this Mandela effect, for instance. And I was reading it in your book, Ed McMahon with the Publishers Clearinghouse.
right.
Yes, of course. And I read that not everybody experienced that. He used to go door to door and knock on somebody's door, and somebody would win $500,000 or whatever. And
Yes,
apparently, this did not happen.
it did not happen. I know. I,
I mean,
it never happened. He didn't even work for, I don't think he was, none of that, the way we remember it.
why did you and I experience that?
I believe it's to draw our attention to the fact that reality is like a waking dream, that it's like this lucid dream, or some people call it a simulation, if that makes them happier. I don't like simulation better. I like dream better because it feels more natural. So to me, it's like this is a waking dream. Reality is malleable. So there are many possible timelines. And, it's kind of funny because I think even Johnny on the Tonight Show, he once, I think, pranked Ed McMahon with some gigantic check. And that makes no sense because in this reality now, Ed McMahon had nothing to do with standing on someone's front doorstep, ringing the doorbell with a gigantic check. He never did that, supposedly. But I remember it, you remember it,
Mhm.
and Johnny remembered it. So what does that say? It says that we should all be paying attention to this. And just like getting locked out of an apartment, to me, this is exactly what humanity needs. If we feel locked out of a good environment or peace or whatever it may seem to be that's impossible, I have confidence that we can take it on because we are collectively witnessing different histories. We're capable of doing that.
Mhm. Now, Cynthia, you have and Cynthia Sue Larson, my special guest on Guys Radio, foremost expert on Mandela effect and reality shifting. You have kind of created money out of thin air. So I think everybody would like to learn how to do that, but also to raise their frequency so they could be more in control of what's going on, if that's a good thing. I guess it's better than reacting. What are some of the things that people can do to put themselves in a position where they can help shape their reality and, as you say, make it as good as that can get?
Yeah, I do have a book all about money. It's called Reality Shifter's Guide to High Energy Money. So that's a good one. It's a small book, but it's got lots of big ideas and exercises and helps people specifically work on that. Because it seems like people, if they grow up in a family with scarcity issues, then that can get a
Mm-hmm.
little bit programmed into their subconscious. And so you want to reprogram yourself, break free of those old cycles, get into whatever natural money finding mode you're in. For me, it's fine if it just shows up. I pulled dollar bill after dollar bill out of my wallet, which is not a magic wallet. That I was with my daughters, and they were quite young at the time, and that helps. Just like if you're doing spoon bending, you want kids in the party. Same thing if you're going to be pulling dollar bill after dollar bill out of your wallet. You want people who are there who are open-minded and full of wonder and joy, and just delighting that, oh, we've got another dollar bill to tip the waitress. But it's the same thing with your bank account. I've had $1,000 and more just show up in my bank account when I need it. It's important to emphasize that. It's when I need it, and it's a feeling of joy, just like any of these other timeline jumping experiences. I find it personally very helpful to be very energized, like that rush of energy just coursing through me, and a feeling of it's kind of like, watch this, and not knowing exactly what's going to happen, but it will be. How good can it get?
Here's another one that a couple of physical organs that we have. You know, when I grew up, I was always like, put your right hand over your left side where that's where your heart is. Now we've learned that the heart is more closer to the middle of your chest. So that's like,
Yes.
well, why were we doing that? And without maybe that was just a something that we were taught to do, but was the belief that the heart was on the left side. And then this other one is the kidneys. Now I have personal experience here because everybody thinks of, you know, kidney punch and the kidneys are in your lower back. I had an operation, robotic surgery on each kidney, and they went in through the front.
Yes. Oh, what year was that? I'm just curious.
2014.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, this one did seem to change around somewhere in that time frame. Not time zone. Yeah, the kidney one is big, and I was talking about it when a woman who was in the audience, she talked to me afterward because she's had lifelong kidney issues. And when she was growing up in the 1990s and early 2000s, they would always check her kidneys in the back. They'd sort of
Right.
have her lie on her stomach, and that's how they access them. But then recently, and I was talking about this a number of years ago, I forget when exactly, but maybe it was 2016, 2017, something like that. She was, I think I've got the date in my book, Mandela Effect and its Society. I looked the date up, like, okay, what year was this? Because she came to me and said that she was just flabbergasted. Like, now they're coming in through the front. And I said, why are you doing that? You've never done this before. And they said, that's where your kidneys are. And she said, that's not where they used to be.
Yeah,
So she,
up underneath the rib cage now. That's where they're saying
now
your kidneys are, right? And
it's
before it was
weird,
the lower back.
right? And you remember the kidney punch, not to
Yeah, of course.
strike someone. You don't want to
Right.
kick or punch
Yeah.
anybody there because
Right.
they could,
Mm-hmm.
right, it could be quite deadly. And that one's huge, just a gigantic, I call it a human upgrade actually, because now when you think about it, the kidneys are safer. They've moved into the relative safety of some of the rib cage protection, which they didn't have before.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Now yeah, it's amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about, if we can, about kind of what's going on in today's world. Everybody's always freaking out about 2024, and we've seen a lot of things that are changing. And I think this is just the beginning. I think there's a lot more on the table. And the realities that were being served up to us could be manipulated also, where they have gotten so good at AI, where with mass media, et cetera, even looking in the skies, we could be seeing things that are projections. I think Regina Meredith was talking the other day about seeing the ABBA concert, and it was a holograph, and she said it was like so real. It was ABBA, even though it wasn't ABBA. So, what's your sense as to what's going on with this, and is this going to be something that is a negative, or is it a positive for us, and what should we be aware of as a population, as a culture?
Right. Well, I recommend staying neutral. We could say it's a negative. You could also say it's a positive, but optimally, our best functional standpoint is neutrality, just acceptance of, okay, we're living in a time of artificial intelligence. We're getting these deep fakes. Language can be faked, people can be faked. It's hard to tell the truth from the fiction. So, on the face of it, that doesn't seem so good. I have to admit, it seems like, well, I love honesty, I love integrity, I love, just kindness, compassion, and caring for one another. So, what about these qualities? Well, I would say, ground ourselves in those qualities. This is what I recommend in the book, Mandela Effect and its Society, because going forward, we need to do that. We need to each be much more compassionate, kind, caring, and be heroic in the sense that we're standing up for what we really believe in. So this time of great novelty, some people call it hyper novelty, because it's been predicted that there would be so much rapid change in this time that we're living through that it'll be hard to tell truth from lies. It'll be hard to know what's going on. So to keep a strong inner compass becomes more important than ever
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and the population is so, I mean, as we've seen over the last 4 years or so, is so, I don't want to say gullible, but malleable, where a lot of behavior. I've changed my view on of friends and then just the whole culture based on everything that's happened. Like, I never thought everybody would buy into certain things, and like, wow. And that means that, the powers that be know that we can be worked that way. And it's just like it's scary in a way. And it's so much more important, as you're saying, the fact that love and values and honesty. Whereas I was reading a quote the other day, it was I think it was Kid Rock said it. He was talking about one of the candidates running for president. It doesn't matter which one, because to me, the parties are so alike now. It's a joke. It's just to get us to arguing. But anyhow, he said, "Oh yeah, he cheats at golf and just anything to win. That's the type of guy we want as president." Like, really? It's all about zero sum. It's about whatever. It's the mean. It's not the means. It's the end game. That's all that matters. What happened to compassion? What happened to caring? What happened to justice? What happened to values? It's like the
Right.
values. It's like it's just money, and who wins, and that's it. And it's a very sad state. Do you feel, because you're a high vibrational being, that are we, you know, I don't know how worse it can get that way, but are we, everybody says, oh, it's all going to change for the good. We're going to go through a little bit of bouncy time, but then it's going to be really good. What's your take on everything that's going on, Cynthia Sue Larson?
That's a good question. And I share a lot of your perspective about the crazy times we've lived through the last 4 years, and also the insanity of demonizing another group of people, whether it's
Yeah,
for politics or for war. I would recommend against both of those. Do not demonize people. People are people, they are
yeah.
lovable. And I know that all of our wisdom traditions and our perennial philosophy recommend these values of love, kindness,
Mhm.
compassion for each other, regardless what we vote for, or who we
Exactly.
vote for, or where we live, or what our religion is, or which side of which border we're on. I don't believe in any of the fighting for politics or wars. So it's a strange position perhaps to be in, but to me it makes sense because it's based on kindness and seeing the truth inside each of us. That's what matters most.
Mhm.
Trusting our own inner compass of goodness. When I say how good can it get, that's I mean it. Like how
Mhm.
good can it get? Not just for me. That's not good at all. It needs to be how good can it get for each and every one of us.
Collectively, yeah.
That's
Are
the
you
only.
are you optimistic, Cynthia?
Yeah, I'm a radical optimist. Yes,
Why
I
is that?
believe.
Why?
Oh man, well, when I first got here, I don't know if I've talked about this, but I'm a born aware person because I do remember the blissed out beingness prior to being here on Earth. And when
I
I
did
got
not
here
know
on
that.
Earth, okay, it's called born aware. It's kind of like a near-death experience, in the sense that it counts because you know that you're not just your physical, corporeal, mortal self. I know I'm not, and I remember who I really am. And so I came in remembering that. That makes a difference. But it also makes a huge difference because when I got here, I thought it was the wrong planet. I'm laughing. So how can I be a radical? It's okay. So I didn't start out with the radical optimist. I got here. It's kind of like the elevator doors open. I'm looking around. I'm thinking, no way, this is a big mistake.
Mhm.
And it's no offense to my family. They're great. Wonderful mother, wonderful father, great childhood. I did not have trauma from that. I just wanted to be back where in heaven, basically, where I'm hanging out with God and the angels is what it feels like. It's all love, it's kindness. Everyone remembers who they are. Instead of this ridiculous farce where people forget who they are, they forget what they're doing. And so, how can I be a radical optimist? Well, I had an intervention when I was 5 years old and figured out how to be dead again. Because I figured out my parents weren't exaggerating about fast cars on the street, and I could do it just right. I wouldn't just get mangled. I could do it so I could die, and I knew I could. And so, right
Great.
when I figured that out, time came to a stop, and all these angelic beings surrounded me, and they showed me. They said, well, first of all, they said your family would never get over this. They'd be depressed and they'd never recover. And I just, man, I was flippant. I just said, oh, they'll get over it. What a terrible thing to say. I wouldn't say that now. Number two, they said, and the people that you'll be able to help will not be helped. And I thought they'll find someone else. Flippancy again. Maybe they would. I don't know. That was a terrible thing to say. But they got me on the third one, the selfish one. They said, and you'll be back. You chose to be here. And I'm like, no way. But I could not. And they said, and you'll lose your 5 year head start. I'm like, no. It felt like 5 years here instead of in heaven had been awful. So how am I a radical optimist? Because of that. Because of that.
Amazing.
It's not. I'm not an idiot. I know what this place is like. I wanted to leave when I got here.
Mhm.
However, I know that each of us makes a difference, bigger than we realize. I know that just mind being able to do things like get through a locked door and know that no matter what I'm looking at, I know it from the physics of it and I know it from the experience of it that we can change that. Therefore, that's the flag that I bear is radical optimism, love, integrity, kindness, and honesty in a very radical, deep sense. So that's what I'm all about, and it inspires me.
Amazing. Perfect place to end our conversation for today. I hope we can do another one. I'd love to do it about the money for our
Yes,
audience. Let's do
let's do it.
that. Tell everybody, Cynthia Sue Larson, where they can learn more about you and get in touch. The name of the book here, I'm holding it up for our YouTube audience, The Mandela Effect and Its Society, Awakening from Me to We, Cynthia Sue Larson. Tell us about it.
Yes, well, my best way to reach me is through my website, which is realityshifters, plural.com. And from there, you can sign up for my newsletter, which I publish on Substack right now. I've also got a presence on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So LinkedIn also. So you can find me lots of places and look
Subscribe.
forward to hearing from you. Yes,
Awesome.
thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being back. I look forward to our next conversation. I learned something every time, and you're doing wonderful work. Keep up the good work, Cynthia Sue Larson.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoy the guests and content I bring you each and every week to Guys Guys TV and Guys Guys Radio, please support us by subscribing to our channels and platforms. Thank you.